Disclaimer: this video contains discussions of real criminal cases and sensitive subject matter. It is created for educational and documentary purposes only. Viewer discretion is advised. All individuals are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. It began as a dream many young couples share. Two hearts on the open road, chasing sunsets and freedom. But what started as an idyllic cross-country van life adventure would unravel into one of the most haunting true crime stories of the decade. By the time the trip ended, the nation would be captivated, and one young woman's name, Gabby Petito, would become a symbol of both love gone wrong and a desperate cry for justice. It was supposed to be the kind of adventure most people only dream about. Two young lovers on the open road, hearts full of hope, and a van packed with everything they needed to chase the American dream. But before summer's end, that same van would become a symbol of heartbreak, deception, and death. When 22-year-old Gabby Petito set out with her fiancé Brian Laundrie, she believed it was the start of something beautiful. The journey was meant to celebrate freedom, creativity, and love. Instead, it would reveal how fragile life can be when love turns into control, and control turns into fear. Somewhere between the canyons of Utah and the forests of Wyoming, the laughter faded, the smiles dimmed, and Gabby's voice went silent. What followed would become one of the most haunting true crime stories in modern America. A story that gripped the nation and exposed the hidden danger that can exist behind the illusion of a perfect life. Gabby Petito was vibrant, kind, and full of wanderlust. She wanted to live differently, to trade the comfort of routine for the thrill of discovery. Her Instagram page was filled with color and joy, smiling selfies, sunrises over mountains, and the white Ford Transit van that she and Brian had transformed into their tiny home on wheels. They had been high school sweethearts. Friends said they were inseparable, but some noticed that their relationship had a pattern, one where Gabby's gentle spirit was often overshadowed by Brian's intensity. Still, she believed in him. In July 2021, they left Blue Point, New York, to begin a cross-country road trip. They planned to visit national parks, log their experiences, and grow their social media presence. It was a modern love story, one that seemed tailor-made for the digital age. But what Gabby didn't know was that this trip would slowly strip away the illusion of safety, revealing a nightmare that no filter could hide. In early August, followers began noticing that Gabby's social media posts felt different. The captions were cheerful, but her eyes looked tired. The once frequent updates began slowing down. Behind the camera, arguments were reportedly becoming common. Friends recalled that Gabby would sometimes confide about Brian's temper, how small disagreements could spiral into heated arguments. She often blamed herself, apologizing for things she didn't do wrong. But she kept trying to make things work. After all, she was in love, and love, she thought, could fix anything. On August 12, 2021, in Moab, Utah, everything started to unravel publicly. A 911 call came in from a bystander who reported seeing a young man slapping a woman near a store parking lot. The caller said the couple was arguing loudly and seemed distressed. Moments later, police officers pulled over a white Ford Transit van matching the description. Inside were Gabby and Brian. Bodycam footage captured the tense encounter. Gabby was crying uncontrollably, shaking, apologizing, saying she was just stressed. She blamed herself for the argument, saying she had anxiety. Brian appeared calm, almost detached, telling officers that Gabby had hit him first. After interviewing both, police decided not to make an arrest. Instead, they separated the couple for the night. Gabby stayed in the van. Brian was taken to a hotel, At the time, it seemed like a minor domestic dispute. But when that footage later went public, millions would replay it in disbelief, witnessing what might have been a final cry for help that no one truly heard. In the days following the Moab incident, Gabby's communication with her family became less frequent. Her mother, Nicole Schmidt, recalled that Gabby had sounded happy during their last video call on August 23. She was near Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming, talking about hiking and the views. Then, suddenly, the messages changed. A few days later, Nicole received a strange text from Gabby's phone. It read, "Can you help Stan? I just keep getting his voicemails and missed calls." Nicole immediately felt uneasy. Gabby never referred to her grandfather as Stan. Something didn't feel right. That was the last text message ever sent from Gabby's phone. After that, silence. Days passed. Her family grew increasingly anxious. Meanwhile, Brian Laundrie drove back to Florida, alone. On September 1, 2021, Brian returned to Northport, Florida, in the same white van the couple had used for their road trip. But Gabby was nowhere to be found. To the neighbors, he seemed strangely calm. He went on walks, mowed the lawn, and spent time with his parents. There were no signs of panic, no public pleas for help, no missing persons report. When Gabby's mother tried to reach Brian, there was no answer. When she called his parents, they refused to talk. 10 days went by before Gabby's family officially reported her missing. That's when everything changed. Once the missing persons report was filed, social media lit up with Gabby's face. News outlets picked up the story. Influencers and ordinary users across TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube joined forces to help find her. Soon, the #FindGabby Petito movement was everywhere. People began analyzing the couple's posts, timestamps, and bodycam footage. Amateur detectives cross-referenced travel logs, satellite images, and eyewitness accounts. One couple even came forward with dashcam footage from August 27, showing the couple's white van parked in a remote area near Spread Creek Campground, Wyoming. That video would later lead investigators to the unthinkable. On September 19, 2021, after days of searching, authorities discovered human remains near the Spread Creek dispersed camping area. The body matched Gabby Petito's description. A few days later, the autopsy confirmed what the world feared. Gabby had been strangled to death. She was just 22 years old. The nation mourned. Strangers who had never met her felt the loss deeply. She had become more than just a missing person. She had become a symbol of all the unseen victims whose stories go unheard. Meanwhile, Brian Laundrie, now the only person who could explain what happened, was gone. Brian's parents told police that he had gone hiking in the nearby Carlton Reserve days earlier and never returned. The timing raised suspicion. How could their son disappear just as investigators were closing in? A massive manhunt began. FBI agents, search dogs, and helicopters scoured miles of swampland. Days turned into weeks, and speculation exploded online. Everywhere, people were asking the same questions. Where was Brian Laundrie? What happened in those final hours, and why had Gabby's love story turned into a national tragedy? By the time investigators began closing in on Brian Laundrie, the world had already turned Gabby Petito's story into a national reckoning. It wasn't just a missing person case anymore. It was a symbol of how quickly love can turn into fear and how silence can destroy everything. Brian was nowhere to be found. His parents claimed he'd gone for a hike on September 13th, 2021, at the Carlton Reserve, a vast, swampy wilderness just miles from their Florida home. But when search teams arrived, they found nothing. No sign of Brian, no phone, no footprints, no trace of the man who had returned from a road trip without his fiancée. The questions only grew louder. For weeks, the Laundrie family stayed quiet. Their silence felt like a wall separating them from a grieving nation desperate for answers. Reporters surrounded their home. Protesters stood outside with signs demanding justice for Gabby. Every movement of the Laundries was scrutinized. Why hadn't they spoken up? Why hadn't they helped find Gabby when she was missing? It was later revealed that, even before the police arrived, Brian's parents had already hired a lawyer. They never publicly explained why, but to many it was clear they were protecting their son. As the days passed, the search intensified. Law enforcement scoured the swamp using drones, K-9 units, and all-terrain vehicles. The Carlton Reserve, thick with water moccasins, alligators, and waste, deep mud, made every search a brutal challenge. Still, they found nothing. It was as if Brian had vanished into thin air. Social media became a modern search party. Millions followed every update, every rumor, every supposed sighting of Brian Laundrie across America. There were reports from Alabama, North Carolina, and the Appalachian Trail, but each one turned out to be false. As the hunt continued, people began digging deeper into Gabby and Brian's lives. Old posts resurfaced, family interviews were dissected, and patterns of control began to emerge. Gabby's friends revealed that Brian often dictated what she wore, where she went, and who she could talk to. What seemed romantic at first, his protectiveness, had slowly become possessiveness. Gabby's mother described her daughter as a free spirit trapped in the wrong kind of love. And now, the man she once trusted most was gone, leaving only questions and heartbreak behind. By mid-September, the FBI had taken over the case. They searched the Laundrie home, towing away the white van as evidence. Inside, they found personal items, Brian's notebook, drawings, and a map marked with national parks. A federal arrest warrant was issued, not for murder, but for fraud, for using Gabby's debit card after her death. It was a small charge, but it was enough to keep the case active. The focus now was finding him before he disappeared forever. Each passing day made that seem less likely. Then, on October 20, 2021, over a month after Brian vanished, investigators made a discovery inside the Carlton Reserve that would finally bring some answers. A dry bag and a notebook were found near a small clearing beside a trail that had recently been underwater due to flooding. Nearby, they found human remains, skeletal and partially submerged. Dental records confirmed what many suspected. It was Brian Laundrie. He was dead. At first, the cause of death was unclear, but weeks later, the medical examiner confirmed it, a self-inflicted gunshot wound. In the bag recovered beside his body, investigators found the most critical piece of evidence, the notebook confession. When the FBI later released details from the notebook, the words were haunting. In his own handwriting, Brian claimed responsibility for Gabby's death. He described it as a mercy killing, saying Gabby had been injured during a hike and was in pain. But investigators and forensic evidence painted a very different picture. Gabby had died from manual strangulation. Her death was no accident, no mercy, no misunderstanding. It was an act of violence, personal, deliberate, and final. The notebook revealed more than guilt. It revealed a mind desperate to control the story, even in death. He wanted the world to believe he loved her, that he did it out of compassion. But the truth was written all over her body, and the evidence said otherwise. After Brian's remains were found, the Laundrie family issued a brief statement expressing grief for two lost young souls. But to Gabby's parents, that statement felt hollow. They believed the Laundries knew more than they ever said. In a later civil lawsuit, Text messages revealed that Brian's mother had allegedly sent him a message before his death saying, "If you go to jail, I will bake you a cake with a file in it." Whether it was a dark joke or something else entirely, it left the Petito family furious and more determined than ever to seek justice, even after both Gabby and Brian were gone. When the dust settled, one truth became painfully clear. Gabby's death wasn't just a tragedy. It was a mirror reflecting something far deeper and more widespread. The signs of domestic violence had been there all along. The fear in her eyes during the Moab police stop, the apology for things that weren't her fault, the subtle signs that so many victims show, yet so few people recognize. The Gabby Petito case forced America to look closer, to ask hard questions about how we respond to domestic violence, how police assess danger, and how social media can both illuminate and distort the truth. It also revealed the power of collective attention. It was a rare case where the internet helped uncover real clues, where strangers united to seek justice for someone they'd never met, but it also revealed imbalance. Many advocates pointed out that thousands of missing women, especially women of color, never received the same level of media attention. Gabby's story became a painful reminder of those still waiting to be found. Today, Gabby's family carries her name forward with purpose. They created the Gabby Petito Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to helping families of missing persons and supporting survivors of domestic abuse. They speak publicly, urging people to pay attention to the warning signs, to trust their instincts, and to intervene before it's too late. Her story has inspired new policies, new investigations, and renewed conversations about the unseen battles behind perfect relationships. Even though Gabby's voice was silenced, her story continues to speak louder than ever. In the end, the case of Gabby Petito is not just about two people, it's about all the invisible struggles happening behind closed doors. It's about love that turns into control and dreams that become nightmares. It's a story of loss, but also of awareness. Because while Gabby's life was cut short, her light continues to save others. Every photo she shared, every word she wrote, every smile now serves as both a warning and a reminder. You never really know what's happening behind the camera. And maybe that's what makes this story so haunting, because it began as something beautiful and ended as something the world will never forget. When the dust finally settled over the tragedy that had shaken a nation, Gabby Petito's name had become more than a headline, it had become a movement. Her story, though devastating, forced the world to confront uncomfortable truths about love, control, and the unseen realities of domestic violence. But for those closest to her, especially her parents, the pain didn't fade when the cameras turned away. It deepened. Every photo, every video, every smiling moment now carried the weight of what could have been. And yet, in their grief, the Petito family found strength. They refused to let Gabby's story end in silence. They turned their loss into purpose. In the months following her death, Gabby's parents, Nicole Schmidt and Joe Petito, stood together publicly, united by heartbreak and determination. They founded the Gabby Petito Foundation, a non-profit organization aimed at helping other families with missing loved ones and advocating for domestic violence awareness. Their message was simple but powerful. If Gabby's story can save even one life, her voice will never truly be gone. The foundation began offering support to families navigating the chaos of missing person cases. It helped fund searches, provided emotional counseling, and offered guidance on how to communicate with law enforcement during critical first hours, the same confusion they once faced. Gabby's parents began speaking at schools, community centers, and police conferences. They didn't want sympathy, they wanted change. They urged everyone to learn the warning signs of abuse, isolation, fear, manipulation, and silence disguised as love. Through every tear-filled speech, one truth echoed over and over: love shouldn't hurt, love shouldn't silence you, love shouldn't take your life. Gabby's story sparked what many call the Petito effect. It inspired massive public interest in missing persons cases across the country. Her case highlighted something that had long been overlooked: the disparity in media coverage. Thousands of missing women, especially those from marginalized communities, receive little to no attention. But when Gabby disappeared, the world stopped to look. Journalists, advocates, and families of missing persons began demanding equal attention for everyone. New hashtags emerged: #FindThemAll, #EveryMissingPersonMatters, and police departments started using social media more aggressively to share information and request public help. While Gabby's case couldn't bring her back, it created ripples that changed how missing person cases were viewed and handled. Her story became a blueprint for how collaboration between law enforcement and the public could save lives. One of the most remarkable parts of Gabby's case was how the internet helped solve it. Ordinary people became investigators, scouring TikTok videos, YouTube clips, GPS data, and van life forums. It was a couple named Jen and Kyle Bethune who were traveling through Wyoming that provided the dashcam footage showing Gabby and Brian's van parked near Spread Creek Campground. That single clip guided authorities directly to Gabby's remains. It proved that digital communities, when united for good, can make a difference, but it also raised important questions about ethics, privacy, and the fine line between awareness and obsession. True crime content creators began examining how they told stories like Gabby's. Many began adding disclaimers, advocating for empathy, and encouraging support for domestic violence victims instead of sensationalizing the pain. Gabby's story changed not just how we investigate, but how we talk about tragedy. For Gabby's parents, justice didn't end with Brian's death. They wanted accountability for what they believed was negligence and deceit from the Laundrie family. In 2022, they filed a civil lawsuit against Brian's parents, claiming that the Laundries knew Gabby was dead long before her body was discovered, and that their silence caused immense emotional distress. During the proceedings, text messages, timelines, and call logs came to light, painting a disturbing picture of how the Laundries allegedly ignored pleas from Gabby's family for help. The lawsuit was about more than money. It was about truth. It was about standing up for their daughter's memory and making sure no family would ever feel that kind of helplessness again. In interviews, Nicole Schmidt often said that her daughter's kindness was what she wanted people to remember most. "Gabby saw beauty in everything," she said, "even in broken things. That sentiment became the Foundation's motto, a reflection of a young woman who once believed every road could lead to something beautiful." The Gabby Petito case continues to spark national and international conversations about domestic violence. Lawmakers have proposed bills aimed at improving how missing person cases are handled, particularly when they involve intimate partners. Police training programs now include more education on recognizing emotional abuse, coercive control, and trauma responses signs that were tragically missed during Gabby's encounter with police in Moab. Organizations have used her case to advocate for what's called Gabby's Law, a push for improved coordination between agencies, faster reporting systems, and more mental health resources for victims in crisis. Her name has become a rallying cry for awareness and reform, but for her parents, it's still personal. Every sunset, every road trip photo, every social media post about van life reminds them of what was lost. They've said that some days are harder than others, but the love for their daughter fuels their mission to keep helping others. In the years since Gabby's death, thousands of survivors have come forward, inspired by her story. Many said they saw themselves in Gabby, the hesitation to speak up, the way she blamed herself, the hope that things would get better. Through that collective awakening, lives were saved. Hotlines reported spikes in calls. More people began reporting suspicious behavior. Friends began checking in on each other more often. Gabby's tragedy became a silent alarm that woke a generation to the realities of abuse. It taught people that control disguised as care is not love, that apologies that come with fear are not affection, and that sometimes the person you trust most can be the one who hurts you the deepest. Every year, on the anniversary of Gabby's passing, people across the world light candles, share her photos, and post messages under the hashtag #JusticeForGabby. But for her family, it's not about hashtags. It's about legacy. It's about turning pain into purpose. Gabby Petito was more than a victim. She was a daughter, a sister, a dreamer, and a believer in love and life. And through the work of her family and the countless lives she has touched, her story continues to echo with one message: if you see something, say something. If you feel unsafe, reach out. If someone you love is in trouble, don't look away. Because awareness is what turns tragedy into prevention, and love, real love, is what keeps memories alive long after the headlines fade. Gabby Petito's road trip was supposed to be a story of adventure. It became a story of loss, awareness, and awakening. Her name lives on not through her final moments, but through the countless lives her story continues to protect. To the Petito and Schmidt families, your courage, your advocacy, and your love have turned unimaginable pain into lasting change. And to Gabby, may your light continue to shine on every road, reminding us all that even in darkness, compassion can still guide the way. Even after the confessions were found, the remains identified, and the nation's grief poured out in millions of words and images, one truth lingered in the air like a haunting echo: not everything had been answered. The case of Gabby Petito had concluded on paper. The world knew what happened. But for investigators, experts, and the public, there were still holes, silent gaps in time, missing minutes, unanswered questions about how a young couple's dream trip across America turned into a tragedy that no one saw coming. Even as the headlines began to fade, curiosity and heartbreak refused to die. Because behind every case file and every social media post, there were moments that still didn't add up. One of the biggest questions still troubling investigators and the public alike was what truly happened between August 12 and August 27, 2021, the 2 weeks that marked the beginning of the end. The Moab police stop had revealed the first visible signs of trouble, captured forever in bodycam footage that millions would analyze frame by frame. But after that night, the couple continued traveling north. Witnesses spotted their van in Utah, then later near Grand Teton National Park, Wyoming. Some travelers recalled seeing them arguing again. Others claimed they seemed distant, as though something was building quietly beneath the surface. The FBI later pieced together that Gabby likely died around August 27, near the time she stopped communicating with her family, but exactly what happened in those final moments remains unclear. There was no witness, no video, no audio, just silence between two people, and one of them would never speak again. The Laundrie family's behavior during the days after Brian's return to Florida continues to raise questions that still have not been fully answered. Brian arrived home alone on September 1st, 2021, driving Gabby's van, wearing his usual clothes, behaving, according to neighbors, like nothing had happened. But what did his parents know, and when did they know it? The Petito family's civil lawsuit against the Laundries revealed that Brian allegedly confessed to his parents about what happened to Gabby before he disappeared into the Carlton Reserve. The lawsuit claimed that the Laundries chose silence instead of action, refusing to speak to Gabby's family even as they begged for information. In text messages and phone records, there were indications that the Laundries knew something was terribly wrong long before law enforcement did. And yet they said nothing. Why? Out of fear, loyalty, or something darker, a calculated plan to protect their son until he could disappear. No one outside that house will ever truly know. When investigators found Brian's remains on October 20, 2021, they also found a revolver and a notebook. But there was more: a backpack, a dry bag, and several personal items scattered in the muddy area that had only recently been uncovered after flooding receded. The discovery location was only a few miles from his home. For weeks, search teams had combed the area, yet somehow missed it. It raised one chilling question: was Brian dead the entire time, or had he been alive, watching the search unfold, before taking his own life later on? The FBI never publicly confirmed the precise time of his death. His remains were skeletal and weathered. The autopsy suggested he'd been there for weeks. But there are still moments unaccounted for: the final hours before the shot was fired, the final thoughts of a man whose actions had destroyed two families. Did he intend to die all along, or did the pressure finally break him? No one can say for certain. The so-called notebook confession Brian left behind described Gabby's death as an act of mercy, a claim that contradicted every piece of forensic evidence. He wrote that she had been injured during a fall, that she was in pain, and that he ended her life out of compassion. But Gabby's autopsy told a very different story. She had been strangled, a slow, deliberate act that takes several minutes. It wasn't a sudden mercy killing. It was rage, control, and power, a pattern that experts say fits the behavior of abusive relationships that turn violent. Why did Brian write those words? Was it guilt, denial, or a final attempt to manipulate how the world would remember him? Experts in criminal psychology believe it was the latter, a last attempt to maintain control even in death, to rewrite the narrative, to twist the truth one final time. Because for narcissistic personalities, control is everything, even over the story that condemns them. Perhaps the most painful what if in the Gabby Petito case comes from the Moab police encounter. In that moment, the signs were all there: Gabby crying uncontrollably, apologizing for being mean, minimizing her own fear; Brian calm, collected, and deflected blame. The officers didn't see an abused woman, they saw a young couple having a bad day. Later reviews of the incident concluded that the officers failed to identify Gabby as a possible victim of domestic violence. They had the authority to separate them for more than a night, to refer her to a shelter, or to file a report that could have saved her life. But they didn't. A state investigation later revealed that the responding officers made unintentional mistakes, but the damage was irreversible. That footage, replayed millions of times, became a gut-wrenching reminder of how easy it is to miss the signs. How many more Gabby Petitos have been turned away, told they were fine, told to just calm down? That haunting question remains the core of her legacy. Gabby's case changed the way the world interacts with tragedy. Social media became both a tool of justice and a stage for speculation. Internet sleuths helped locate her van, spot key clues, and track the timeline. But others turned the case into content, creating conspiracies, spreading misinformation, and using Gabby's story for views. Even today, countless theories continue to circulate online about the Laundrie family's actions, about hidden accomplices, about secret messages in Gabby's final posts. While some of these theories stem from genuine curiosity, others have blurred the line between awareness and exploitation. It's a reminder that behind every headline, every hashtag, there are grieving families, real people still struggling to heal. The truth should never become entertainment. The official investigation into Gabby Petito's death may be closed, but the emotional investigation continues. Every unanswered question leaves a scar, a reminder that sometimes closure is an illusion. There are things the world may never know, the words exchanged in that final argument, the exact moment her laughter faded, the thoughts that haunted Brian before he disappeared into the swamp. But maybe those details aren't what matter most. What matters is what the story revealed about how we see victims, how we respond to pain, and how easily danger can hide behind love. Gabby Petito's story will never truly be over. It will live in courtrooms, classrooms, and conversations for generations. It will live in the minds of those who saw her final smiles and wondered how something so bright could end so darkly. Because the real question left behind isn't just what happened to Gabby, it's how we let it happen. How many more warning signs will go unseen? How many more cries for help will be mistaken for just a fight? And how many more families will beg for answers long after it's too late? In the end, the road trip that turned deadly became something more, a call to awareness, a lesson in empathy, and a haunting reminder that even the most beautiful journeys can hide the darkest destinations. When the world first heard Gabby Petito's name, it was through news alerts, hashtags, and heartfelt pleas from her family. But as time passed, her story transcended the tragedy. It became a cultural turning point. A story that reshaped how we think about relationships, media responsibility, and the power of collective awareness in a digital age. The Gabby Petito case wasn't just about one young woman's life ending too soon. It was about everything her story uncovered, the patterns, the silence, the systems that failed her, and the global conversation her loss ignited. For many young people, Gabby's story was the first time they saw a modern relationship unravel in real time. Her Instagram and YouTube videos painted an image of a perfect life on the road, adventure, love, and freedom. But when the truth came out, it shattered that illusion and forced millions to confront a painful question. How often does social media hide what's really happening behind closed doors? Viewers went back through her posts, analyzing her smiles, her tone, the details in her captions. What once looked like joy now appeared fragile, an unspoken plea for help hidden behind filters and hashtags. It was a realization that resonated deeply with a generation raised on digital perfection. Gabby's story became a warning. Not everything beautiful online is safe in reality. She became a symbol for those living in quiet fear, those who smile on camera but cry in silence. In the wake of Gabby's death, something extraordinary happened. Empathy became collective. People who had never met her felt personally invested. Communities around the world held candlelight vigils. Artists created portraits. Travelers left flowers at national parks where she once smiled for photos. Her story united millions of strangers in shared grief and determination. It reminded the world that behind every missing person headline was a human being with dreams, laughter, and loved ones waiting at home. This collective empathy reignited old conversations about the overlooked victims, the missing women and men whose cases never made national news. It wasn't just about finding justice for Gabby anymore. It was about changing the system that had allowed so many others to go unnoticed. Before Gabby's case, many missing person investigations followed a rigid, time-consuming process. But the public outcry changed that. Law enforcement agencies began realizing the power of social media not as a distraction, but as an investigative tool. The footage shared by travelers, the viral timelines built by ordinary users, the photos and geotags all became essential in narrowing search zones. The FBI credited public tips and digital cooperation as crucial to locating Gabby's remains. Since then, agencies across the U.S. have adopted faster response models for missing person reports, including social media collaboration units and online information portals where families can submit digital evidence directly. Gabby's story changed how investigations work. It proved that awareness, spread fast and wide, can save lives. The most significant legacy of Gabby Petito's story is its role in amplifying awareness around intimate partner violence and coercive control. For years, victims have struggled to find the right words to describe their experiences, how emotional and psychological abuse often comes long before physical violence. Gabby's story gave those experiences a face and a name. Experts began re-examining the Moab police stop, using it in training sessions to teach officers how to identify victims who minimize their trauma, who apologize excessively, or who seem afraid to speak in front of their partner. Advocacy groups reported surges in calls after Gabby's case gained attention. Victims recognized themselves in her, realizing that what they thought was normal, love, might actually be manipulation and control. Gabby's family leaned into that awareness campaign, using their platform to partner with shelters, counselors, and prevention programs nationwide. Through the Gabby Petito Foundation, they funded hotlines, sponsored survivor resources, and worked with lawmakers to strengthen victim protection laws. Her name became a call for help, a lifeline for those still trapped in silence. Gabby's case also forced the media to look inward. It raised the question, why did her story dominate headlines when so many others didn't? Scholars and journalists began referring to this phenomenon as missing white woman syndrome, a term describing how certain victims receive disproportionate coverage due to race, appearance, and socioeconomic background. The discussion wasn't meant to diminish Gabby's case, but to illuminate inequality in attention and empathy. Thousands of missing people, particularly from indigenous and minority communities, had gone largely unnoticed. In response, several media outlets pledged to diversify their coverage, dedicating segments to underreported cases. Podcasts, YouTube channels, and journalists began shifting toward broader inclusivity, ensuring that the next Gabby Petito, regardless of race or background, would not be ignored. It was uncomfortable, necessary growth. Her tragedy sparked a reckoning. Even the world of true crime storytelling changed in the aftermath of Gabby's death. Creators began moving away from sensationalism and toward empathy-driven narratives. Many adopted disclaimers, trigger warnings, and closing messages that honored victims rather than glorifying perpetrators. Documentaries about Gabby's case set a new tone, less about the killer's psychology and more about the system, the awareness, the warning signs. The focus shifted to prevention, education, and humanity. Gabby's story helped reframe the genre from one that often entertained to one that now educates and advocates. In the months that followed, families of other missing persons came forward, many saying they were inspired by the Petito's strength. Some had given up hope years ago but decided to reopen their search, believing that renewed awareness could bring answers. Others began using social media themselves to tell their loved ones' stories. Communities rallied around these efforts, often citing Gabby as the reason they started paying attention again. Her story didn't just reveal darkness, it lit a spark of action across countless lives. Gabby Petito became a name that symbolized more than tragedy. It became shorthand for reform, awareness, and vigilance. Schools began teaching about healthy relationships and emotional boundaries. Universities hosted seminars on recognizing controlling behavior. Police departments rewrote training manuals. Survivors found the courage to share their voices. Every one of these changes traced back to the same heartbreaking story: a young woman who loved deeply, dreamed freely, and trusted completely. Her story became proof that change, though born from pain, can still grow into something powerful. In the years since her death, Gabby's name still trends, especially when new cases of domestic abuse or missing persons arise. People invoke her memory as a reminder that no one's pain should go unseen. Her foundation continues to raise funds, expand outreach, and educate others on the dangers of coercive control. The impact of her story now lives not only in documentaries or news specials, but in policies, laws, and conversations happening around dinner tables across America. She became a mirror, showing society not only what was broken, but what could be fixed. Gabby Petito's story may have begun with heartbreak, but it ended with purpose. She became more than a victim. She became a catalyst. Her memory reshaped laws, changed investigations, and awakened compassion in millions who had never met her. And while her road trip ended too soon, her journey continues. In every life saved, in every victim believed, and in every story now told with empathy instead of spectacle. Because sometimes it only takes one story to change the way the world listens. And Gabby Petito's story did exactly that. Even after the tragedy of Gabby Petito's death and the subsequent discovery of Brian Laundrie, her story continued to ripple far beyond the headlines. For many families across the country, her story was a painful reminder of their own loved ones who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. It became a symbol of hope, a call to action, and, for some, the courage to reopen investigations that had long gone cold. Gabby's case ignited a movement. Families of missing persons saw how social media, public attention, and digital investigation tools could help solve cases that had previously seemed hopeless. Some had been told their missing loved ones' cases weren't a priority, sometimes for months, sometimes for years, but Gabby's story showed them that public awareness could make a difference. Across the United States, parents reopened old reports, community volunteers combed through local trails, and social media campaigns were launched to locate the missing. One mother stated, "If Gabby's story could bring her home, maybe my daughter can come home too." This collective energy became a force in the ongoing fight for justice, not just for Gabby, but for countless others whose stories were still unfolding. Lawmakers and advocacy groups seized the moment to push for systemic change. Policies were introduced to improve coordination between local law enforcement agencies, speed up missing person alerts, and ensure digital evidence was effectively utilized in searches. Training programs for police officers now include lessons from Gabby's case, recognizing subtle signs of domestic abuse, understanding coercive control, and responding more effectively during early encounters. Gabby's tragedy became a blueprint for prevention, a reminder that awareness and intervention are crucial before it's too late. Her story also transformed how the public understands domestic abuse. Specialists began emphasizing the emotional and psychological signs often overlooked: controlling behavior, isolation from friends and family, manipulation masked as care. Through talks, campaigns, and foundation programs, survivors found the courage to speak out. Schools introduced modules on healthy relationships, teaching young people the difference between love and control. Gabby's story is now referenced as a case study in how small, early warnings can save lives. An example that words, actions, and vigilance matter. Perhaps one of the most enduring lessons of Gabby's case was how the internet can serve as both witness and watchdog. Ordinary users scoured posts, reanalyzed videos, and tracked movements. Dashcam footage from travelers became a key piece of evidence that helped locate Gabby's remains. Yet the case also raised ethical questions. Conspiracy theories spread, private details were shared without consent, and the line between awareness and exploitation blurred. Through this duality, Gabby's story became a lesson in responsible social engagement. Online activism can save lives, but it must be balanced with respect for families and victims. Today, Gabby Petito's name symbolizes resilience, advocacy, and hope. She became more than a tragic headline. She became a catalyst for change. Her parents, through the Gabby Petito Foundation, continue to honor her memory, transforming grief into purpose. They have helped countless families feel seen, heard, and supported, and have ensured that Gabby's light continues to shine. Her legacy is proof that even in the darkest tragedies, there can be enduring impact. A story that saves lives long after its beginning ended in heartbreak. Gabby Petito's story was a journey of love, dreams, and loss. It began with hope on the open road and ended in a tragedy that captivated a nation. But her story doesn't end with death. It continues in every family inspired to keep searching, in every law enforcement officer trained to see the signs, and in every survivor who found the courage to speak. Her name is a reminder to look closer, listen harder, and never ignore the quiet cries for help. Gabby Petito may have been taken too soon, but her legacy is eternal, illuminating paths for others, changing systems, and teaching the world that awareness, empathy, and action can transform even the darkest of stories into a beacon of hope. Because in remembering Gabby, we remember the importance of protecting one another, listening to the signs, and fighting for justice, always.